back to the job site, everybody. I'm Max Soul, your lead composer and chief engineer on today's journey.
And I'm Mello Soul, your head of operations and vocal specialist.
Hell yeah.
And we're grateful that you tuned in to Max and Mello's Architects of Soul.
That's right. Today we're auditing one of the most powerful buildings in the history of music. A woman whose vocal displacement is so heavy, she's been known to rezone entire theaters with just one note, and I have seen that. We're talking about the godmother of soul, Patti LaBelle.
Well, Max, where do we start? Talking about Patti is like talking about a high-pressure steam engine. People see the feathers, they see the hair, but they don't see the structural integrity it takes to stay on top for 60 years.
Oh, exactly, Mel. And it all starts with the sanctuary specs. Because the Holt family and the church, well, that was their string, Mel, which we have seen with numerous architects that we've covered. So Patti, who was born Patricia Louise Holt, obviously didn't just stumble into music. She was engineered by the Beulah Baptist Church in West Philadelphia.
The church, Max.
Oh, yeah, Mel.
That's where so many of the cats come from, Max. The church in the black community is like boot camp.
It sure as shit is.
You ain't going to just sit.
No, definitely. I played gospel in my younger musician days simply because every time I came across a great musician and I asked him how he got that way, typically he told me it was from playing in the church. Like, I learned in the church. So, Mello, I went to the church. Okay, back to Patti. While her father, Henry Holt, was a railroad worker, he was also a singer with a technical gift for the blues and gospel.
Right, Max. Her mother, Bertha, was the nurturer of the household, but it was the church choir that acted as Patti's first job site. A kid from West Philly finding her frequency in the choir loft of the Beulah Baptist Church. Her father, Henry, gave her the blues blueprint, and the choir, that gave her the power surge.
Bet it did.
Patti was famously shy as a child, a quiet build, they would say, but a skyscraper in the sanctuary.
Yes, she totally was. Once she stepped into the choir loft, Mello, her vocal displacement was so powerful that she became a local legend before she was even out of her teens. And that's the peer lesson right there for the new vibe. You don't just start with the stadium. You start with the acoustic audit of the church or the basement. She wasn't just singing. She was learning how to project a frequency that could fill a room without a microphone, and she sure as hell could do that.
Absolutely. Her parents weren't stage parents in the modern sense, Max, but the moral and spiritual infrastructure they provided gave her the resilience to handle the industrial grit of the music business later on.
That's true, Mello. Now, in the late 1950s and early 1960s, Philly was a hotbed for vocal group Soul Fam, and as vocal music went from doo-wop to soul singers, well, Patti was very much a part of the early version of a group called the Audit. And when two of the original members left to get married, Patti and the remaining member needed new material to keep the group from collapsing.
Luckily, and as we have seen so many times, it's that person who links the chain, Max.
Oh, it surely is, Mel.
The architect behind the scenes. In this case, a local friend introduced Patti to Cindy Birdsong.
Oh, bingo card.
Cindy wasn't a classmate or a church member. She was just another girl from the neighborhood who had the vocal literacy and the look they needed to reinforce the frame.
And once they met Mello, they realized that their frequencies matched perfectly. They spent their time practicing in Patti's mother's kitchen, not at school or at church. No, they were drafting their sound in private before they ever took it to a commercial zone.
Yes, and the kitchen was their laboratory.
Patti turned that around later on, too.
Yeah. They would spend hours working on their step-touch choreography and their harmony blends, Max. So as Patti and Cindy solidified their partnership, their local manager, Bernard Montague, realized the Audettes needed more vocal reinforcement to compete with the heavy hitters. So he looked at another local group called the Del Capris and identified two specialists, Nona Hendryx and Sarah Dash.
Oh, those sound like familiar names.
Mm-hmm. Architect behind the scenes, Max.
Yeah, that's the cat, right? And the results, Mello, by merging the best elements of the Audettes, which was Patti and Cindy, with the best of the Del Capris, Nona and Sarah, they created the quartet that would eventually become Patti LaBelle and the Bluebelles.
Patti and Cindy were the architectural core of that early sound. While Patti provided the high-frequency leads, Cindy provided the structural blend that allowed the group to compete with the Motown sound. They were a vocal construction crew with a Philly grit that the industry wasn't ready for.
That's right, and we're going to deconstruct how that grit stood up against the Motown finishing school when we come back. Stick around, we're just getting the scaffolding up. You're in the house with Max and Mello's Architects of Soul.
Be right back, y'all.
Hey, we're back on Architects of Soul. Before we dive back into the industrial standoff between Philly and Detroit, well, I just want to remind you, if you like this content, please give a like and subscribe to our channel. And remember, there is a video version available on our YouTube page if you feel like watching instead of just listening.
We would much appreciate it, Soul Fam.
Sure would.
Now, Max, let's get back to the breakdown on the godmother of soul. So now we have the four girls, Patti, Cindy, Nona, and Sarah, starting to perform in Philadelphia in the early 60s as Patti LaBelle and the Bluebelles. They were built on the standard girl group specs, matching dresses, choreographed moves, and doo-wop harmonies.
Which was pretty much at the time. Mm-hmm. The vocal ceiling, even early on, Patti's voice was just too big for the standard zoning laws of pop. While other groups focused on the blend, Patti was already testing the structural stress of her upper register. Girl could sing, Mello.
She could sing.
Damn, that girl could sing.
Still can.
She still can.
Yeah.
She definitely still can. Mm-hmm. So they originally got signed to a small label as the Bluebelles, named after Bluebell Records. And when that label folded, they were picked up by Newtown Records, and the name Patti LaBelle and the Bluebelles was etched into the Metropolitan Directory of R&B.
And don't forget, Max, at the time, they were the chief rivals to the Supremes.
They certainly was.
Certainly.
They certainly were, Mello. That's right. That's right, Mello. The friction between Patti LaBelle and the Bluebelles and the Supremes was a classic industrial standoff between surgical precision and raw structural power. The tension peaked between 1963 and 66 during the height of the girl group construction boom, which tons of girl groups at the time. So while both groups were drafting the future of soul, they were working from two completely different technical blueprints.
Yeah, the Bluebelles were known for their gowns, but they weren't polished in the Motown sense. While Berry Gordy was sending the Supremes to finishing school to learn how to walk and talk for the high-zoning white clubs.
That's right, because Berry could make some money.
Exactly. But at the same time, the Bluebelles were coming at the audience with Philly grit.
Yeah, they was the hardcore working class.
Exactly. The friction was about class versus soul. Patti famously said they felt like the country cousins compared to the sleek Motown machine. And this would be the Motown finishing versus the Philly foundation. Man.
That's right, Mello. We ended up with a vocal displacement war. You see, Soul Fam, the Supremes, led by Diana Ross, were engineered for the radio frequency, light, airy, and pop friendly. The Bluebelles, on the other hand, were engineered for the live theater. When they shared a stage, Patti's vocal volume would often blow the structural integrity out of the room, making it hard for a precision group like the Supremes to follow, but it did.
So it's the cusp of 1964-65, and there's a legendary story about the two groups sharing a dressing room at the Apollo Theater.
That's right, Mello. The Supremes had the industrial backing of Motown, with matching luggage and a fleet of assistants. Mm-hmm. So Berry-like. The Bluebelles were the general contractors, though, and they did their own hair and ironed their own dresses. Well, and the friction, it wasn't just professional either. It was about the economic divide, Mello, between a major label empire and an independent soul shop. Could not have been more opposite if they tried.
No, Max, and I love the story about them sharing that room at the Apollo.
Yeah, me too.
The Supremes had the industrial backing of a corporation, and Patti's crew had the spirit of the independent shop.
But then, Mello, the ultimate structural breach happened. In 1967, Florence Ballard was being pushed out of the Supremes, and Berry Gordy, of course, needed a replacement specialist who could fit the Supremes blueprint immediately. And knowing Berry, as we well do, Mello, take a wild guess at what his next step was.
Shade. Yes, Max, we know how Berry operates. Berry Gordy looked at the Bluebelles and identified Cindy Birdsong as the perfect fit. She had the look, the voice, and the stage literacy required. Just like every Berry Gordy story, we find some shadiness.
Oh, no doubt. We certainly do, Mello. Apparently, Cindy left the Bluebelles to join the Supremes in the middle of the night. Now, how's that for Berry Gordy drama?
Sneaky.
It is so. So this left Patti, Nona, and Sarah with a collapsed frame. They were suddenly a trio instead of a quartet. Like, what the fuck? Forced to redraft their entire professional future, and this forced a transition, going from the Bluebelles to LaBelle in 1970. But it wasn't just a rebrand, Mello. It was a total controlled demolition of their previous career.
Yeah, so they decided to kick the walls down, Max.
Oh, yeah.
They went from being girl group laborers to sonic architects of the future. After Cindy Birdsong left, Patti, Nona, and Sarah were stuck in a structural loop, playing the same old school R&B circuits. And by 1970, the Bluebelles were a trio, Patti, Sarah, and Nona. And their career was definitely stalling in the States.
Okay, Soul Fam, we always talk about cross-pollination. And here we see an amazing example of just how the perspective of being in another genre can open your eyes to things that the people that are living in it cannot see. So in the mid-'60s, The Who, which was a absolute powerhouse British rock band, they were on their first major tour in the United States. And during that era, Well, tours weren't solo missions like they kind of are today. They were package tours that put completely different architectural styles on the same stage. Cross-pollination.
Yes.
Mello and I talked about this when we talked about Bill Graham in the Fillmore in Aretha, season 1, episode 6, y'all. Because Bill was all about the cross-pollinating of styles. 12 tones, play them any way you like.
Yeah, so because of this tendency, Max, which unfortunately we don't really see today at all.
I know, it's sad.
No, but the Bluebelles were booked on several of the same package tours as The Who. Can you just imagine? Well, just imagine the structural contrast. You have the British invasion and the power pop of Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey, followed by the raw soul displacement of Patti and the Girls.
So Mello, Kit Lambert, who managed The Who, was notorious for watching every show from the wings. Now, he wasn't just checking the sound specs for his own band. He was literally a student of audience dynamics. And Kit's motto was, hey, you never know till you see for yourself. And Kit Lambert, well, he was thorough in his desire to see what worked and what wasn't working.
So he watched Patti LaBelle take a mic and literally demolish the room, Max.
I have seen that, Mello. It's true.
I've seen it many times, too.
Oh, I know. Patti could torture any room she was in.
I've seen her put the mic down and walk away from it and still be heard, every word.
She is the most professional singer ever when it comes to that stuff. She's off mic and on mic, and you wouldn't even know the difference. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So Kit realized that the Bluebelles possessed a sonic violence, a raw, high decibel energy that was actually more rock and roll than most of the rock bands of the time. He saw that their internal gears were spinning faster than the girl group gowns they were wearing.
Yeah, well, Max, Lambert stayed in touch with their management, and when the group hit a structural ceiling in the U.S. around 1970, he saw an opportunity to pivot the asset.
Right.
And here's where the architect behind the scenes shows up for the girls, Max.
So you may say to yourself, why would he do that? And because that, as we've seen time and time in the show, telling us to support each other because what you receive, you pass on. Guess what that does? It expands exponentially. You see, Soul Fam, Kit knew the British mod scene was obsessed with authentic American R&B. And he figured if he brought the Bluebelles to London, he could use his industrial influence to redraft them for a more progressive audience. So they took a working visa to England to play a residency at a club called The Revolution.
So next comes that handoff, because Kit didn't just book them, Max.
No, he did not.
No, he curated their environment. By placing them at The Revolution, he ensured that they were being watched by the lead architects of the London scene, including his close friend Vicky Wickham, another architect to plumb the connection.
Exactly, Mel. Vicky Wickham was a high-powered media developer in London. And she was the producer of the groundbreaking music show Ready, Steady, Go.
I remember Ready, Steady,
Go. It was
Go.
great. Yeah, me too. It was an amazing show. She went to the club as a fan, but she left as an architect. Vicky watched them performing their old school girl group routines, the matching gowns, the polite choreography, and she realized there was a zoning error here. Oh my God, the world was changing. Rock and roll was getting louder and grittier, and these women had voices that could shatter a stadium. Yet here they were trapped in lace blueprints.
And Vicky didn't want to just manage them, Max.
No, hell no.
No, she wanted to gut the building.
Yeah, rip it out.
She approached them with a radical site plan. Number one, stop pleasing the industry.
Hell yes.
She told them to stop trying to be the polite alternative to the Supremes.
That's right, Mello. Fuck that. Number two, let's change the acoustic load, Vicky thought. She encouraged them to listen to rock, funk, and soul fusion.
And then number three, the kicker, the new identity.
That's it.
She rebranded them simply as LaBelle. It was a move away from the front woman and backups model toward a joint venture trio where every member was an equal pillar.
Damn right, Mello. She told them to be a rock band with soul voices. Now that's a structural shift that changed the whole neighborhood of R&B.
Exactly.
Without Vicky spotting them at the Revolution, we might never have gotten the space-age LaBelle.
And that's the peer lesson for Season 2, Episode 15, y'all. Sometimes you need an outside architect to see the potential in your foundation.
Truly.
Yeah, the girls knew they were powerful, but Vicky gave them the planning permission to be radical. No permit needed, ladies, so just kick it.
Yes, just kick it. Damn straight, Mello. So Vicky takes over managing them, essentially, redrafting the group. She realized that the soul frequency of the time was shifting and the Bluebelles needed demolition. And so, Mello, she blew it up real good.
She surely did, Max. She told them to ditch the wigs, the sequins, and the choreographed step touch. She wanted them to act like a rock band with soul voices, rebranded as LaBelle. They swapped the gowns for silver lame, intergalactic feathers, and metallic headpieces. They looked like they had just landed a modular space station in the middle of a Harlem street corner.
That's quite a view. So the rebrand and the rebuild is on. And in 1974, they went down to New Orleans to record the Nightbirds album. But they didn't just hire a standard pop producer. they brought in the master of the Bayou Groove, Allen Toussaint, a masterful architect who we will visit in a future
Definitely,
episode.
we have to get to him.
Without a doubt. Allen brought the Creole engineering, the surgical funk, tight horns, syncopated piano, and grit-heavy bass lines.
Patti, Nona, and Sarah weren't just singing lead and backup. They were layering frequencies. Nona was writing deep social political lyrics while Patti was providing the vocal fireworks.
And this Mello, it culminated in the most badass of tracks from these girls. Lady Marmalade, released that year. Well, Mello, the track became the commercial skyscraper of the era. That track bridged the zoning divide between the church and the club. It was a commercial skyscraper built on Creole grit. It hit #1 on the pop charts, proving that a group of black women in spacesuits singing about a New Orleans streetwalker could bridge the zoning divide between the church and the club. How badass is that?
Okay, and speaking of zoning divides, we're going to divide the show again right here and take a short break.
That's right. We'll be right back to talk about the next step in the journey of our girl, Patti. You're hanging with Max and Mello's Architects of Soul. Stay with us.
We're back on Architects of Soul, talking the great Patti LaBelle. So, Max, we got to talk about the solo renovation phase.
Yes, we must.
Yeah, but first let's talk about the decommissioning of LaBelle in 1976, which officially stretched into the public split of 1977.
Right.
Which was a classic case of structural divergence.
The group didn't collapse because of a lack of success, Mello. They disbanded because the three main pillars of the group, Patti, Nona, and Sarah, were pulling the acoustic weight of the building in three completely different directions. By 1976, the material specs of the group had worn thin, leading to a controlled dismantling of this trio.
It's true, Max. As successful as they were, there were three intersecting forces at play here, and that created a structural fracture or a creative rift stylistically. Basically, rock versus soul. Three ladies, three paths, Max.
Yep, three paths, soul fam. First, Nona Hendryx, who was the group's primary songwriter and wanted to push LaBelle into a much more radical, aggressive gothic rock and new wave frequency. She was writing dark, political, and sexually fluid lyrics that were pushing the boundaries of the era.
And then we have Patti, Max, LaBelle's foundation. Patti, at her core, was rooted in gospel, soul, and traditional R&B.
The church.
Right. She was becoming increasingly uncomfortable with the aggressive rock direction and the ultra-radical concepts.
I will bet that she was.
Yeah, Patti felt they were moving away from the soul frequency that built their foundation.
And because Vicki Wickham had re-engineered them as a joint venture trio, Mello, well, there was no official lead singer on paper. So there was constant tension regarding the vocal spotlight. Fortunately, there was Sarah Dash, number 3, who was the ultimate structural liaison of LaBelle. In the architectural layout of the group, if Patti was the high-frequency skyscraper and Nona was the avant-garde rock foundation, Mello, Sarah was the harmonic anchor holding the entire frame together.
She surely was, Max. But when the divergence started happening between 1974 and 1976, Sarah found herself caught directly in the middle of a massive industrial tug-of-war.
Yeah.
Being the middle pillar became a dilemma, and Sarah's position during the split was complex, defined by three main factors.
That's right, Mello. Sarah was the classic diplomat, sort of the peacekeeper of the joint venture. And on paper, Vicki Wickham structured them as three equal partners. But psychologically, the tension between Patti and Nona was a massive load-bearing strain. And Sarah spent a lot of energy trying to balance the egos and the creative friction, acting as the buffer so the group could finish their tour dates at the very least.
Musically, Sarah was incredibly literate and versatile.
She sure was.
The vocal chameleon of the trio, really. And she could sing the high soprano or drop into a deep, sultry alto.
Yes, sir.
But because she could sing anything, she felt caught between the two styles. She loved the traditional soul and gospel roots that Patti wanted to protect, Max, but she also appreciated the daring, futuristic, and sexy edge that Nona's rock writing brought to the table.
Yeah, literally caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah. She didn't necessarily want to choose between the cathedral and the stadium. She liked the hybrid that they had built.
Oh, she sure did, Mello. But the intense schedule of touring in heavy spacesuits, makeup, heels, combined with the pressure of following up the massive commercial success of Lady Marmalade, well, Well, that created severe internal anxiety and emotional exhaustion.
It's true. Patti later admitted in her memoirs that she was experiencing hyperventilation and panic attacks on stage towards the end, Max. The breaking point occurring during a weekend residency at New York City's Beacon Theater in 1976.
Yeah, it was coming. The internal communication had completely broken down, Mello. Nona was dealing with immense personal and creative stress. And reportedly, she spent part of the performance singing with her back to the audience or screaming into the microphone. I can't even imagine that.
Yeah, it must have been some scene,
I
Max.
bet.
Patti realized right there on the stage planks that the structural integrity of the group was entirely gone. But instead of letting the building collapse in public, they made a strategic decision to decommission it. Patti and Nona on opposite sides and Sarah in the middle.
Yeah, Mello, Sarah reportedly was devastated. I mean, she felt that the group was just dismantling as they had just achieved the true global scale. So while she understood that the internal communication had completely eroded, it truly was a hard pill to swallow to watch a gold-certified, headlining marquee act dissolve because the main pillars couldn't agree on the blueprints anymore.
But decommission they did, Max. They finished out their 1976 commitments and quietly went their separate ways to launch solo ventures in 1977.
Patti went on to pursue the traditional soul and pop ballads that suited her massive vocal register.
Nona launched a solo career exploring experimental art rock, funk metal, and new wave.
And once the liquidation was finalized in 1977, Mello, well, Sarah didn't look back with bitterness. She used the opportunity to prove her own value as a sole proprietor.
That's right. She shifted her zoning toward the dance and disco sectors, Max, scoring a massive solo club hit with Sinnerman in 1978.
Which is a killer tune.
Later, her incredible session literacy caught the attention of rock royalty, leading her to tour and record for years as a vital member of Keith Richards' Expensive Winos and guesting with the Rolling Stones.
Not a bad life, not a bad life. And now, Mello, after LaBelle was decommissioned in 76, Patti was the sole proprietor for the first time in 16 years. And it wasn't an easy build. She spent nearly a decade in the renovation zone. And since we are in the zone as well, we're going to take it and zone out for a few minutes with a break.
You're listening to Soul Fam to Max and Mello's Architects of Soul, and we're talking Patti LaBelle.
Yes, sir, we surely are. Stick around. We will be right back. Thanks for tuning into Architects of Soul. Our music is waiting for you.
And you are back with Max and Mello's Architects of Soul. So, Patti LaBelle's solo renovation phase was a true test of her industrial resilience, Max.
Sure was, Mello.
See, when LaBelle disbanded, Patti was left without her vocal crew and without the futuristic blueprint that had made her a star.
And finding the architect who provided the global plug, well, it wasn't a single event either, Mello. It was a series of structural repairs that led her back to the top of the skyline.
So for nearly 7 years, Max, Patti was signed to Epic Records / CBS Records. She was releasing solid soul specs like You Are My Friend in 1977, but the zoning was off. She finally did have a solo #1 hit in 1983 with If Only You Knew.
Great song.
Yeah, but the industry was trying to fit her back into the standard R&B floor plan, and she wasn't seeing the massive scale she deserved.
Massive
Scale she deserved.
But she was performing like a titan, Mello. I can attest to that. When she rolled through the Apollo, man, she was killing it. And this was way later on. So I could only imagine what she sounded like then. But the radio frequency, well, it just wasn't picking her up. Airplay, I guess, became scare play. Patti was like, well, I need a new drafting team.
She surely did, Max. By 1984, Patti was feeling that structural drift at Epic Records.
Yeah, that sinking feeling.
Yeah, they weren't giving her the marketing budget or the contemporary production assets she needed. She was effectively trapped in a non-cross-pollinating R&B only floor plan.
And who the heck wants that anyway? Meanwhile, as Patti's trying to pivot, Mello, an architect behind the scene appears. We love this stuff. Enter Irving Azoff, who'd just taken the reins as the head of MCA Records. Azoff wasn't just trying to put together a standard movie record, Mello. He was executing a massive corporate rezoning of the entire MCA label.
Exactly, Max. When Irving Azoff took over MCA in 1983, the label was jokingly referred to in the industry as Music Cemetery of America for the MCA. Yeah, exactly. It was stagnant. Azoff's grand blueprint to fix this was to use the Hollywood movie soundtracks as a launch pad.
This is so brilliant, Soul Fam.
Yeah, so it's to break new sounds and scout major talent without the financial risk of signing them to full album deals up front. Pretty crafty, Max.
I would say so, Mello. So producers Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer were editing Beverly Hills Cop, Soul Fam, and they needed an energetic, high-octane, synth-heavy electric pop sound to match Eddie Murphy's fast-paced comedy style. They had the electronic score coming together from Harold Faltermeyer, but they needed a massive commanding voice that could piece through the heavy Roland Jupiter 8 and Lindrum synth textures of 1984 production. There's that Lindrum again.
Exactly. This is where the engineering behind the scenes gets deep, Max. See, Richard Perry was already working closely with MCA on the soundtrack because he produced the Pointer Sisters' Neutron Dance.
Badass song.
Oh, yeah. Which was originally written for another movie, but got reassigned to the famous cigarette truck chase scene in Beverly Hills Cop.
And seeing how perfectly Richard Perry's ultra-modern synth pop production fit the movie's framework, well, MCA started looking for other powerhouse vocalists who could pull off that same high-energy crossover vibe. We know who that is. Mm-hmm. Now, Patti was still stuck at Epic Records, criminally underutilized and mismanaged. But because the soundtrack albums are handled under separate film studio legal permits, well, MCA realized they could hire Patti as an independent subcontractor for the movie without needing a full-blown release from her primary label. Fucking brilliance.
And Max, because movie soundtracks are handled under separate legal permits than the standard solo artist contracts, MCA's music supervisors were able to hire Patti as an outside subcontractor to record a couple of tracks for the film. Wink, wink.
Nudge, nudge. Say no more.
Yeah, even though she was still technically signed to Epic/CBS.
So brilliant. They handed Patti New Attitude, produced by Howie Rice, and Stir It Up, produced by Faltermeyer and Keith Forsey Mello. MCA didn't just want her for one track, Mello. They gave her 2 key positions on the track list because they knew her vocal displacement was the only thing big enough to anchor the movie's main montages. So she cut New Attitude and Stir It Up for the movie, Mello. Then Beverly Hills Cop exploded into December of 1984. New Attitude became a top 20 pop hit and an iconic cultural anthem. And now MCA executives looked at the data and realized they had just engineered a massive pop hit for an artist signed to another label. How fucked up is that? Mm-hmm. So how do you like that, Mello? They immediately moved to buy her contract out from Epic, officially bringing her over to the MCA roster full-time in 1985 and saving their asses.
Exactly. And this, Max, is where the timeline gets highly strategic. See, Richard Perry and Burt Bacharach didn't just show up when she arrived at MCA. They were the master builders brought in to design the framework for her monumental 1986 crossover album, Winner in You.
And Richard Perry was already a legendary pop soul specialist, as we said before, having resurrected the Pointer Sisters' career with the massive synth pop hits like Neutron Dance. Oh, my God. Which was also on the same Beverly Hills Cop soundtrack, which was an amazing soundtrack, especially for the time. Mm-hmm. So Irving brought Perry in to act as the key production anchor for Patti's new solo blueprint.
Richard Perry's job was to update her sonic equipment.
Sure was.
He produced multiple heavy hitter tracks on the Winner in You album, including Oh People and Twisted, injecting that pristine mid-80s high-fidelity synth production that allowed her massive voice to pierce the global pop charts.
And here comes the architect, Mello, Burt Bacharach and his songwriting partner, Carol Bayer Sager, who we explored when we did the Dionne Warwick Don't Make Me Over podcast, season 1, episode 9, y'all. Were brought in the exact same 1985 booking window.
Burt Bacharach wasn't trying to produce an entire funk album, Max.
Not sure he could.
No, he was just brought in to build the crown jewel of the project.
Which he could.
Yeah, he laid down the acoustic piano foundations for On My Own and engineered the cross-coastal modular build with Michael McDonald that gave Patti her first and only solo #1 pop single on the Billboard Hot 100. He was the lead architect who understood massive scale of her voice, and Burt and Carol Bayer Sager.
And that's the industrial connection right there, Soul Fam. Burt Bacharach wrote On My Own, and he knew he needed structural magnitude. He didn't just want a singer. He wanted a vocal cathedral. Well, Patti sure was that, Mello. She could easily handle a massive pop ballad without losing that soul foundation.
And that surgical move of pairing her with Michael McDonald.
That plug.
Yeah, that plug was a stroke of production genius. They paired Patti with Michael McDonald, Max. To them, it was the ultimate blue-eyed soul meets the high-octane Philly soul collaboration.
Now, that is a cross-pollinating modular build, Mello. Snap those parts together. Technology, Soul Fam, moving the world of music forward. They recorded on opposite coasts, Patti in Philly, Michael in L.A. They didn't even meet, but the harmonic alignment was so tight, it hit #1 on the pop charts.
I remember it well. It's a pure lesson for us for soul and the new vibe. Sometimes the plug isn't in your own backyard. You have to find the architect who sees your vocal frequency and knows exactly where it fits in your global skyline.
Exactly, Mello. Patti proved that the building might go through a renovation, but as long as the foundation is solid, you can always rebuild bigger. And speaking of rebuilding bigger, union rules call for a break right now.
Don't piss off the union, Max. Play nice and take the break.
You're probably right, Mello. I usually piss someone off. Okay, Soul Fam, we'll be right back to talk about the Patti Pie Empire.
Oh, yeah, the pie, yes.
Oh, the Pie Empire.
You're kicking it with Max and Mello's Architects of Soul, and we're talking the great Patti LaBelle.
Don't go nowhere. Hey, welcome back to Architects of Soul. So, Mello, we're coming to the final inspection of this episode. But before we wrap, if you like this content, please give a like or subscribe to our channel. And check out the video version on our YouTube page, just to see the job site in action.
Max, we can't talk about Patti without talking about the kitchen rezoning.
The Patti Pie Empire.
Mm-hmm.
Man, she didn't just slap her name on a box, Mello. She'd been a culinary general contractor her whole life. In fact, she used to cook for the stage crew in her dressing room. And when I was working on Latifah and on Tyra, she came to both shows and she cooked.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, she could cook. Girl could cook.
Yeah, she took that nurturing spec and engineered it into a retail monument. When a fan video went viral in 2015, Walmart was selling one pie every second. Now that's industrial demand.
Yeah, she rezoned from the stage to the grocery aisle, Mello. It's the 360-degree brand, which is what today's market is. She showed us that an artist brand architecture doesn't have to stop at the microphone. You can build in the living room and the kitchen at the same time. Kind of like a couple of songwriters who are doing a podcast.
A podcast, exactly, same kind of thing. It's about domestic literacy. Whether she's hitting a high note that shatters the frequency specs or baking a crust, the structural integrity is the same. She's feeding the ears and the stomach.
With a flaky, warm crust. No, she made the industry build a new wing just to house her talent and her business.
Yeah, she most definitely did, Max. Well, so fam, this has been a heavy audit, Max. From the Beulah Baptist Church to the spacesuits of the 70s to the Patti Pie Empire.
Yeah, Patti LaBelle is the master architect of resilience. She taught us in Soul of the New Vibe that you don't have to fit into the industry's floor plan, which we fucking love. Mm-hmm. You can draft your own future, even if it means changing the materials midway through the build.
She stayed a slave to the soul while mastering the 10% music, 90% business ratio that Quincy Jones always talked about.
And it's the truth, that 10% of music and 90% of business. Mm-hmm. Business works. And as always, at the end, we'd like to close with our final thought and our hope for all of us, our art, our craft, and our creations.
Keep that soul fire burning, protect your sound, nurture your creativity, own your voice, and remember the lessons from the giants who came before.
And yes, protect your masters and seek out wise mentors who can guide you on your journey. And until next we meet, peace and soul, y'all.